You're listening to Contesting Wrestling, the podcast where we talk about the things that fans love and that most normal people really can't stand about the world's most popular form of simulated combat. My name is Evan Burke. I am somebody who is traditionally really not a big fan of wrestling. I've tried to get into it throughout the course of my life, hasn't really worked out. So I decided to start this podcast with three of my oldest and closest friends, all of whom are basically walking encyclopedias of wrestling history with various relationships to wrestling, and for them to try to get me into it by selecting various matches.
Did you hear that, guys? Evan just called us all old.
And apparently he's normal.
And then, yeah, okay, all right. So this is a podcast that's riddled with lies. For more lies, you can follow me personally at Evan Burke, etc., and you can follow this podcast at Contesting W.
And for more lies, follow the Democratic Party.
Yeah. Well,
Let's go around and do intros.
All of the parties. Yeah.
And my name is Doc Diamondfire. I've been in professional wrestling for about 11 years. You can follow me on Twitter at Dr. Diamondfire. It's Dr. Diamondfire. I do commentary, ring announcing, wrestling, a little bit of everything. I love everybody here, and I'm so happy to talk wrestling with them.
My name is Katie Vella, a.k.a. you can follow me at Ref Katie. I've been in wrestling for about 6 years, been a fan since 2003. I am a connoisseur of rear ends.
And you're a referee.
And I am a referee. I am a connoisseur of rear ends first, referee second.
I mean, look, if you want to see a lot of butts, get into wrestling reffing, because that's pretty much what you're looking at the whole time.
It's the only reason I did it.
I am Dr. Ben Abelson. I am a professor of philosophy at Mercy College and also a lifelong follower of professional wrestling.
He's also single.
So today is
Indeed.
we're going to cover something that we've been talking about since we first started this podcast. I am intrigued by the concept of jobbers, and specifically the kind of match that people call a squash match, which I understand does not always involve jobbers.
The technical term would be enhancement match.
Well, so a squash match is a very specific type of enhancement match where the objective of the match is to break a gourd over the opponent's head.
It is. It's very... I love fall, and I'm not afraid to admit that. And so the idea of doing a match based around the kinds of foliage and vegetables that you eat during the fall was really exciting to me.
You will generally have a cornucopia of various squashes, anywhere from butternut or spaghetti to the standard zucchini on the side of the ring.
It's like at the first Thanksgiving when the Pilgrims performed a series of painful holds on the Native Americans.
So
it's not that far off.
So there are actually two different kinds of squash matches we're really talking about today. One is really the more typical enhancement match where you have a jobber, you have someone who's not someone who's showcased as a superstar, who's just there to take a beating to make a superstar look good. And then we're also talking about a couple of matches that were high-profile matches, even in one case, a world title match, that turned out to be a squash for specific reasons, for specific storyline purposes.
I also want to say before we really get into it, Evan had the first idea that we should do a squash match episode ages ago, towards the beginning of this podcast. I brought it up that we should do it specifically because we had just recorded all the Jericho ones and the Kenny Omega episodes where we had watched all of these super long matches. And the matches are great, but I wanted to do something different. So there's nothing we're watching where the video of it, including the pre and post stuff promos, is more than 7 minutes. Most of them are much shorter than that.
And it's good to see a different, I'm trying to get a perspective on all of the different sides of wrestling.
Yeah.
And, we had thus far, I think you guys have been picking, the greatest matches of all time. The matches that you would show somebody who wasn't into wrestling who was curious about it.
Or, when we're being mean, the worst matches.
Well, yeah, exactly.
They're notable as well.
And, this seems like an important part of the history of wrestling, an important part of the side of it, an important part of the development of certain characters, and it's just, an exciting thing to get into. It's something new I haven't seen yet.
For a long time, 90% of the matches shown on television were either squash matches or, if not complete squashes, one-sided affairs where only one person was really an important wrestler. And that idea behind that was if you wanted to see the guys really who you cared about wrestle each other, you would buy a ticket to see them in person at the show or pay to see it on pay-per-view or what have you. Also, the side effect to this, which is very important and they've lost now, is that everybody on the main rosters is a winner. If you lose to all of the other main wrestlers, but still most of the matches the fans see you are on television beating people, you're perceived as a winner, as opposed to now where a lot of the guys on the main roster of the WWE are just seen as losers.
And they give away so many matches that they could build to be important pay-per-view matches by just having them on Raw every week. It's a real problem, and I don't know if they can put the genie back in the bottle.
Yeah, they do a little bit, but they can't do it like they used to.
This is Contesting Wrestling. Get the fuck off our lawn.
Right.
So,
Well, no, I was gonna say I something I know, like a meta statement about all of these matches that I noticed right away, or at least the ones that are like a superstar versus a jobber.
Yeah.
Is that I don't know how much this could still happen now, because I felt like, right away I'm like, how. It feels like it doesn't really... I understand theoretically that it's supposed to make the star look really good because he just comes out and obliterates this guy. But it's like, once again, if you've got like, a real character that we've built up who's put all this effort, and they come out and they destroy Bob, the dude in a leotard who is 5'3", like, does that really say anything?
Think about it this way. It's not just, it's a one-sided victory. The guy comes out. The superstar comes out. The audience can see them, which is what they want to do. They do their set of moves, which the crowd wants to see, and it also establishes these are their moves, and the crowd likes to see them.
Or in the case of Diesel, their one move.
Yeah, and it's like if your favorite band is on the Tonight Show, they're only going to play one song, and if it's a long song, they're going to cut the last verse off. But that's the purpose of it. It's if you like this, and maybe you've never heard of them, if you like that song, maybe you'll buy their album, maybe you'll go see them in concert.
Yeah, and I mean, at least growing up, so several of these matches are from one specific show, WWF Superstars, which is the wrestling show that Doc and I grew up watching.
Oh, yes.
It was the first wrestling that we watched. And, we knew wrestling was predetermined and this and that. I don't remember ever thinking that it was a legitimate contest.
Yeah.
And it was, we got introduced to the characters. That's what it's about. It's not, I didn't even think about, like I knew they were gonna win,
Right, of course.
And like it was just, I want to see what their moves are. I want to see what their mannerisms are. I want to see how they build their character. So we have one of these matches, Razor Ramon against Dwayne Gill. By the way, did you recognize Dwayne Gill?
No, I mean, he kind of looked like my uncle.
I mean, he has like the worst haircut ever.
It's Gilbert.
That's Gilbert.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right. I have thoroughly enjoyed him and the other times I've seen him.
So
When it was time for Gilbert to happen, they were like, we know this guy who could do it, so they got him,
they finally shaved off he was already
Yeah.
balding and had the terrible hair.
He looked like if Hulk Hogan, made a lot of bad decisions when he was young.
So, yeah. So this is, or Mr. Perfect, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
He bumped like Mr. Perfect.
Yeah,
he
he
bumped
was
great.
Well, a lot of these so-called jobbers were very technically sound wrestlers. A word for them in the business would be carpenters or mechanics, because they know how to put everything together, and they'd be professionals at making the other guys look good. And part of that is making sure you don't look that good.
So this is from the August 14th, 1993 episode of Superstars. So really only less than a year into my regular watching of wrestling. And so we see Razor Ramon come out. He gives his jewelry to the attendant who takes their stuff and is like, something happened to this, something going to happen to you.
This was when he was still faking being Cuban.
Right. So yeah, my trying to do the Spanish accent is pretending to do his already fake Spanish accent. I think that makes it okay.
Yeah, he was freshly turned baby face here.
And he, it was a Scarface kind of gimmick.
Okay.
He says he pitched the gimmick to Vince, and Vince had never seen Scarface, and he thought that he was a genius. Great.
And so he throws the toothpick in the guy's face. and he just he proceeds to do all of his moves on Dwayne Gill. Dwayne Gill, being the mechanic that he is, takes the bumps the way he's supposed to take them, and so we get to see all of these character beats and wrestling beats that make up the Razor Ramon character.
They have inserted in a promo by the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase, who was beefing with Razor at this point, to be like, well, you might be fighting this guy, but at SummerSlam, I'm going to fight you, and it's going to be different,
I love those picture-in-picture
Me too.
promos that they would do.
Just great.
By the way, DiBiase references that kid who stole your $10,000. We're going to talk about that in the premium episode.
Right, well, we'll get to that.
Two things. One, so I didn't realize that Macho Man was ever a fucking commentator.
Oh, yeah, for about a year and a half.
He was a great one.
Oh my, so good. I love the sound of his voice. I love his banter. At one point, Vince McMahon says to Jerry Lawler, "You should grow a mustache, King. It'd make you look more regal." And then Macho Man says, "Anything to cover his face."
I got
Macho
that
Man
too.
was the best.
Yeah.
Savage and Lawler going back and forth was pretty great, too.
Everyone should make fun of Lawler.
And, like, Savage and Lawler had been fighting since, like, the 70s.
You notice at the top of the show that Lawler talks about how Jim Cornette has just come on
Yes.
the scene to manage Yokozuna. So this was a really important time.
So we watched it. We watched a wide variety of stuff. I really don't want to dwell too long in any given match.
I do just want to. Well, there was one last thing. There was a point where Razor Ramon turns to the camera and he's sort of holding Dwayne Gill like a hunting trophy, like a like.
Oh, that's the sack of shit.
That's what
The
he
follow-away
calls it.
slam.
Yeah.
He calls it the
okay,
sack of
yeah,
shit.
that's I don't know. I just amused. I was amused by
just
that.
great.
That's my last point.
He just tosses him, right?
Yeah.
One last thing about this match, though. Doc and I, when we were coming up with the list of matches, we immediately said, let's do a Razor Ramon squash match. For some reason, he really pops up in my mind, and I guess in yours as well, as the guy we'd see squashing jobbers every week.
He was the best at it. He knew how to, and he talked about it in interviews. When you have a squash match on television, as Razor Ramon put it, it's like a 6-minute advertisement for you.
Sure.
And you have to take advantage of it like that. And he knew how to do that. And it's what got him so over in the first place.
He had such a definitive moveset, too.
Yeah.
The sack of shit, then the back suplex off the top rope,
Yeah.
and then the fucking Razor's
The
Edge.
Razor's Edge, his finishing move.
And he had the
crucifix powerbomb,
the cutting motion before it, you know, and it was just like every little piece of the match was, marketable in a sense. It was a part of his brand before people really talked about that.
But that's exactly what it was. I'd like to go back to the oldest thing we've ever watched for this show, I think. Except possibly one of the Randy Savage interviews, maybe. But the Andre the Giant match.
Yes.
I wanted to watch an Andre the Giant match from before his body had completely broken down, and you can tell by now he's already a little hurting, but it's not like his match with Hogan.
Yeah, he already was having trouble standing up straight. He couldn't stand up straight anymore by this point.
This is March 6th, 83.
Yeah, 83. It's a handicap match versus Jose Estrada and my very first wrestling trainer, Johnny Rods.
Yeah, and Andre's prime, just to be clear, was in the 70s, correct?
Yes, through the very early 80s. This would be right at the end of it.
This is WWF.
Yes.
All-Star Wrestling.
This match, I thought, made a little more sense in comparison to some of the other matches we watched. Just in the sense that there is a sense of tension, kind of. Like, you don't really think Andre is going to lose, but there's, kind of a back and forth.
There's
It's two guys.
thick dudes, beating on him.
So I think at this point, and this speaks a little bit to what we were talking about earlier, I think maybe more people believed wrestling at this point.
Sure.
And so it wasn't like, this is a squash match. This is a jobber. By the time we get to 93, it's like everybody kind of knows. So they can make it a little more obvious.
Also, people would come to the arenas to see Andre. So the act, and they knew that Andre was going to beat somebody or whatever. They probably advertised locally, Andre the Giant in a handicap match. Oh, and if you go to the arena, you see this man who is so much bigger than everyone else. And then they have a couple of guys that are much shorter than him trying to fight him. And the spectacle of that, there's a freak show aspect to it. And I mean that with complimentary.
There's one point where Andre, they're sort of in the middle of the ring, and Andre chops one of the guys and chops him clean out of the ring. The guy just goes flying backwards and tumbles out.
I mean, the stories that go around about Andre are better than the matches. Like your
Yes.
stories of him drinking like 40, 50 beers in one night.
Yeah. Ric Flair said he saw him drink 100 once.
Damn.
And then just pass out in the hotel lobby. There are
And
several stories.
Nobody
of
could
him.
move him.
So they
you
put
know?
a piano cover over him.
I love the very beginning of the match where Estrada and Rods, it's like they planned it beforehand. Like, all right, we're both going to get up on the second rope and we'll both jump at him at the same time. And that way we'll get him. And it's completely ineffective.
Yeah, they each
He
get
just
one of his
swats them
arms.
away, yeah.
I also love how at the very, very beginning of this video, like the match starts and then they're still reading an ad over the
Yes.
match as it's going, and it's an ad. I can't even fucking remember what, but it's for like Dave's like patio and siding local
Yeah.
business or something.
Did you notice they said it was in Ridgewood, Queens?
Yes, yeah.
And they mentioned that they had a show coming up at the Ridgewood Grove Arena.
Yeah.
Which I recently read about. It was
Yeah,
like
yeah.
a popular wrestling spot in Ridgewood, Queens. Speaking of ads, there was an ad for Pro Wrestling Illustrated at the
Yeah,
top.
I liked that too. We should make it a point to like put as much of the like YouTube links because we just mined YouTube for this stuff
Yeah.
in like whatever documentation we have for this episode. I wanted to talk for a minute about Johnny Rods because I trained under Johnny Rods. He's been training people in New York for decades. Since the '80s, he started training people in the '70s. He's a very well respected guy within the industry.
He's about 112 years old these days.
Yeah, something like that. In all honesty, we don't know what his real age is, but I believe he's in his early 80s. He's been in the wrestling business for over 60 years. He was friends with Andre. Andre trusted him to work with him. And he was respected as a shooter, which in wrestling, especially back at the time, would meant like you couldn't mess with him in the ring. They would send people who were new to the territory to have a match with Johnny. They'd beat Johnny, and then they'd ask Johnny, "Okay, how was that guy?" And Johnny would tell the promoter how that guy
Interesting.
was. And if you tried to mess with Johnny, he knew how to hurt you in the ring. If you thought, "Oh, here's the job guy, I'm going to take advantage of him." No, you won't. Because Johnny can handle himself.
Yeah, and various wrestlers have played that role over the years. The
Yes.
Brooklyn Brawler for a long time.
Yeah.
I think like Val Venus and Scotty Tuhati more
Yeah,
recently.
Sean Waltman did it for a while.
Where but the Waltman wasn't like the complete jobber when he was doing it.
But he was the measuring stick.
But yeah, like the jobber who the company actually really trusts to gauge the talent of the new guys coming in.
I mean, anyone that comes out to Uncle Cracker will always be a jobber to me.
Oh yeah. You can't be respected after that. I mean, as much as I did walk down the aisle to Uncle Cracker, but that's different. You're not asking people to respect you at your own wedding.
I mean, that's what you and your wife banged to on your first date.
Yes, and all subsequent dates.
Speaking
I'm
of banging,
I'm so lucky she does not listen to this podcast.
Yeah, this is going to be the first one she decides to listen to.
Why?
I'll text her.
So at the end of the match, Andre splashes one of them.
Yeah.
And then the other one jumps off the top rope to splash Andre, and he moves out of the way, and he ends up splashing. I think it's Rod splashing Estrada.
Rod splashes Estrada, yes.
And then Andre pins both of them.
Andre just
He
sits
just
on
Yeah,
sits
them
on
he
them.
just sits on them both at once.
with a big smile. I would like to point out also, it's so hard to be a baby face and be that big and dominant, but Andre pulls it off effortlessly. Andre is so happy to see the people and like to have these guys fighting him. And I talk about Johnny Rods. I don't want to take anything away from Jose Estrada. The two of them, partners and rivals over the years, icons in Puerto Rican wrestling, et cetera, et cetera. They were great. They were great. Johnny Rods was put in the WWE Hall of Fame in 1996, and a lot of wrestling fans that didn't know much about wrestling wanted to know why, because it's like all these great world champions, and this guy you saw lose to everybody. It's like, no, Johnny's in there for a reason.
Why? Because you don't bump in the Dumbo, Pa.
No bump in the Dumbo. You hurt yourself. I'm not going to do my Johnny Rods impression, but everybody that trained under him does a Johnny Rods impression. He's a character. He's training people out of New York. Check him out.
World of Unpredictable Wrestling
World
at
of-
Gleason's Gym.
That's right, World WUW, or as everybody there just says, WW. And that always drove me crazy. I always enunciated all of that stuff when it was time to do promos.
I call it woo.
Whoa, yeah.
To be fair, I couldn't think of a 3-letter combination that is clunkier to say.
TNA.
Oh God.
So-
Yeah.
But that's not
WW.
hard to say though. Like
rolls off the
WUW, my mouth hurts now that I just
Yeah.
said that.
Woo!
So at the very beginning of this video, when they're running down the card,
Yeah.
they mention Iron Mike Sharp.
Yeah, Iron Mike
Who
Sharp.
at the time was like an actual superstar. By the time we were watching Superstars in the early 90s, he was a perennial jobber, and I think perhaps my favorite
Yeah,
of
he was
all
great.
the regular jobbers. So we see him wrestle the Big Boss Man on a WWF Superstars episode from September 12th, 1992, very close to the very beginning of my watching
Yes.
wrestling. One of my very earliest memories of watching wrestling is the Big Boss Man wrestling a jobber. Not this match. He was wrestling someone who was blonde. It could have been Dwayne Gill, actually.
Might have been Dwayne Gill.
And I remember sitting there with my dad, and like I knew some things about wrestling, and like I knew who Hulk Hogan was. I remember my dad and I being like, "Is he wrestling Hulk Hogan?" It's like, no, that guy's getting beaten up way too bad to be Hulk Hogan.
I do want to go on record real quick and make a pun. I do think it's absolutely criminal that Big Boss Man wasn't a bigger star. Like, he was incredible. He's everything I ever watched him in. He was incredible.
Yeah, Ray Trailer's awesome, but Iron Mike Sharp,
yeah.
also really awesome. He's just hilariously irritable.
Was I did notice first off, like, so this match starts and I was like, well, I can't root for the cop, so I'm rooting for the jobber in this, which I know is not going to
That's
happen.
fine.
Ray Trailer actually founded the Paw Patrol.
And then yeah, it's I got nothing. Fuck.
You tried.
It is. I'm gonna edit a joke in later. That's why I'm gonna take my mic home today. But I do note, like, he had I was like, this jobber seems to have a lot more personality than
Yeah.
other jobbers, and like also like was larger, like almost the same size as the
He
guy.
gets a shine. The beginning of the match is him fighting off Boss Man a little bit before Boss
Yeah.
Man takes over.
He's got a brace on his forearm. He had like a perpetual forearm injury.
Yeah.
That was part of his thing. Yeah, he had wrestled a bunch around the territories, I think in World Class Championship Wrestling, a couple other places. He was a fairly well-known wrestler in the 80s. By the time we got to the 90s, he was just a guy who Vince trusted
Yeah.
to work a good match,
Right.
getting his ass beaten.
I mean, this match is, unfortunately and sadly, an accurate depiction of law enforcement in this country.
Yeah.
And but yeah, it
Even
was-
handcuffs him at the end of the match for
Yeah.
some
I
reason.
want to point out something about that. There is a reason for that. This is coming off of the angle they did with Nails.
Right.
So the gimmick with Nails is that he's a guy who he said that Boss Man put him in jail unjustly. And so this huge, scary-looking dude in a orange prison jumpsuit came out one day, attacked Boss Man, got Boss Man's nightstick, handcuffed Boss Man to the ropes, and went to town with the nightstick. And it was one of the most violent gimmicks angles that the WWF would have pulled at the time.
And then he tried to stab Vince.
Yes, that was later that year. I'll get to that. So this was, he handcuffed Boss Man handcuffs Iron Mike Sharp to like show like when I get my hands on Nails, I'm gonna get him. And he threatened Sharp with the nightstick, but he didn't hit Sharp with the nightstick because he's trying to be a babyface. He kind of poked him a little in the ribs with it, like, "Aha, I got you." And like that was kind of that. Yeah. So they did the match with Boss Man, and then they were gonna move Nails on to like a feud with the Undertaker or something. And apparently, Nails was not happy with his payoff. And in order to express that to Vince McMahon, he grabbed Vince by the throat and slammed him against the wall and was like, "Where's my money?" To which Vince fired him immediately, because why would you do that? It's like, I mean, first, yeah, you didn't get paid as much as the Big Boss Man. The Big Boss Man's a gigantic star that's been on TV for years. And the biggest thing that ever happened in your career was getting beat by him on pay-per-view. If you keep that momentum going for a while, then you'd be worth the money. But until then, Boss Man's the star.
You notice Bossman had kind of slimmed down
Yes.
around this time, and they plug his integrated training, like
Yeah.
because they were doing the whole Ico Pro thing.
the hot Boss Man.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, you should not attack Vince unless you have either destroyed all of his Horcruxes or unless you are ready to chop off his head Highlander style.
Right.
So then a very literal squash match.
Oh, are we talking Yokozuna?
Yes, from February
yeah.
15th, 93, Superstars.
Yoko was so good at this.
Yoko was the
yeah.
king of squash matches, man.
He's against Casey Cleric, who is not even a notable
I
jobber.
don't know who he is now.
And
Look, all I judged this on before I approved this for the episode is what does the bonsai drop look like? And it was like Yoko could do it two ways. He could either hold onto the top rope, land on his feet, and lower himself quickly onto the guy. Or he could just stick his legs out and land with his 500 pounds on the guy's chest. And he does that to this guy twice. It looks like he murders him. And the second time, he just sits there while they do the promos.
I'm not convinced he doesn't murder him. Did you hear from the guy afterwards ever?
Nope.
Yeah, no. And he hits the bod side, and you kind of see his junk bounce off the guy's face as well.
Yeah. Oh, and there's an extended shot at the end of this match where Yokozuna is sitting on the guy, and the guy absolutely could fillet Yokozuna
Yes.
if he had his pants off. And he's kind of twitching in a way where I was like, that doesn't look like he's selling. That just looks like he's actually twitching.
Oh my
God.
There's a couple other squash matches of his where you can literally see someone telling him, "Get off the guy!
Yeah.
He's gonna suffocate."
Yeah. Yoko really seemed to not give a shit about this guy at all.
Yeah.
He gives him one of the shittiest Irish whips I've ever seen.
Yeah.
He just grabs him with his right hand, and it's just go in the corner.
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna squish you again.
Yoko does all his moves. He does the leg drop. He does the belly-to-belly suplex. This guy gets no offense on him. The story behind this one, as Mr. Fuji said in the promo afterwards, they're getting ready to face Bret Hart at WrestleMania.
Who he calls Bret the Squash Man Hart.
Bret the Squash Man Hart.
He's really into cornucopias.
It is, yeah. Bret Hart, I will say he's known for a lot of things. He's known for being a professional killer. He's known for executing moves really well. People don't understand he can make a brown sugar glazed butternut squash with the fucking best of them.
Being really into cornucopias is, Evan, that's why the poop bucket's so bad today.
It's out of control today, I will say. But it's also, since he's from Canada, too, he can infuse an acorn squash with maple syrup like very few can.
How did you feel about Yokozuna in general, Evan?
Oh,
Your first seeing of him,
This
right?
is my first seeing of Yokozuna. I do feel like if this is the kind of match that he does, it's fucking great.
Hell
because he, just beats the shit out of this guy, utterly destroys him, then after the match is over, destroys him again, just because he can, just to make a point. Maybe a racist caricature? Yes.
Maybe. He was actually a sumo grandmaster.
Really?
Despite he is not Japanese.
Yeah,
though.
he's Samoan.
He is Samoan.
If you really look into
He's
it,
part of that whole big Samoan family.
Oh, well, okay.
If you look into it, they never really directly say he's Japanese. They say that he's they say that Mr. Fuji found him in the islands, and he's with Mr. Fuji, who's very Japanese. Mr. Fuji was a wrestler from the early 70s, and he had been in the WWF through the WWF this whole time. He was a wrestler until he was a manager, and then he was a manager until he retired. And he was the epitome of the racist Japanese stereotype character, the sneaky Pearl Harbor, Japanese guy. But Yoko, not much they did with Yoko was really overtly racist. He was just a sumo wrestler.
Yeah. No, and I guess if he's actually a sumo grandmaster,
I don't know if he's actually a sumo.
He's not a sumo
I don't
grandmaster.
think
he was a sumo wrestler.
He was a sumo wrestler.
He wasn't a grandmaster. Earthquake was a sumo master.
And Earthquake was actually, and they did the sumo match eventually.
They did a sumo match with that.
Oh,
That's
don't get me started on how underrated Earthquake is.
But if you're actually a sumo wrestler, then you would do all of that ceremonial shit.
Oh yeah, with the salt.
But
and,
I don't know.
before
I'm
the match.
checking Wikipedia right now.
Yeah. I think he had some experience in sumo before that. I could be wrong.
Oh wait, no, he never competed as an actual sumotori.
Well,
Total gimmick.
one way or another, he did it
case.
very well.
That just shattered my childhood.
They did one. They did a vignette with
understated.
Yokozuna once, an extended one on one of the home videos where Mean Gene Okerlund visits Yokozuna and Mr. Fuji at a restaurant to eat. And they just show Yoko consuming more food than you could possibly imagine, like sushi and shrimp and rice and everything. And the whole time, Fuji is telling Mean Gene, "Come on, eat as much as possible." And he's like, "Well, I have to wait for Yokozuna." He's like, "No, eat now." They cook up 20 steaks and cut them up, and Yoko just starts eating them.
Yeah, apparently Yokozuna ate like that all the time, which is why he's dead.
Yes, he was.
Oh dear.
He was incredible at 450 pounds. He was pretty great at 550 pounds. He was worrisome at 650 pounds.
Whoa.
He eventually made it to where they were billing him at close to 8. I don't know what his final weight was, because at that point you got to you literally have to weigh yourself at the fish market.
Yeah.
He apparently lost a couple hundred pounds right before he died, but it was too late.
Yeah, he genuinely is one of those people that look, Weight, for the most part, has no correlation to physical fitness,
Yeah.
but he died of obesity.
Well,
Yeah.
once you get
morbid obesity.
once you get that big, it's a big problem. And the WWF tried to help him. They tried to send him to, nutritionists and dieters, and they put him in programs. Like, there's stories of them sending him and Vader to, like, diet, and then them sneaking out of the diet camps to go to Burger King and eat thousands of calories every night. Because it becomes an addiction. It's
Yeah,
like you
man.
have to eat like that.
I'm all for body positivity
Yeah.
and stuff like that, but if you're pushing 800 pounds, unless you are 9 feet tall,
Right.
that's not great.
There is a reason there is a TV show about that.
Yeah, well, that show is a goddamn is a fucking nightmare. Wait, we're talking about The Biggest Loser?
No.
Oh, okay.
My 600-pound life, which is exploitative in its own right, but they're actually like saving these people from
Yeah.
dying.
Okay.
It's
that's-
not
yeah.
like The Biggest Loser where it's like, well, you too can do this, and we're not going to show most of it. My 600-pound life is like,
No, these
yeah.
people are like food addicts
Oh,
and
okay.
need like
Yeah, yeah.
bariatric surgery to save their life, and there's only one doctor in the entire U.S. that will do surgery on people that big, and
Damn.
blah 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 blah. I
Yeah.
could go
et
on.
cetera, et cetera.
So while Razor Ramon and Yokozuna were both great squash match artists,
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say Squash Masters, which is
Squash masters.
That's
is good
true,
too.
yes.
They're both squash masters, perhaps the most notable squashers of them all,
Yeah.
and perhaps the originators of the complete obliteration squash match are Hawk and Animal of the Road Warriors.
Oh,
Is
yeah.
this match even 30 seconds?
Maybe.
I thought I had to watch this match twice
Yeah.
because the first time I watched it, I was not really paying attention because I thought it was a video package recap of a previous match. And then it was
Nah.
only when it ended, I was like, oh, that was the match.
No, that's it, buddy.
So this is from the May 2nd, 1987 episode of National Wrestling Alliance World Championship Wrestling. But it could have been pretty much any week on the World Championship Wrestling show because they would just come out regularly and kill two poor schlubs.
Oh, and it worked like $1,000,000. They were the most overact in the company. People would describe the reaction when they came to big arenas as the Road Warrior pop because of how violently people loved it when they came out because they knew that's what was going to happen.
These particular schlubs were named David Isley and Mike Force, but it
Sure
doesn't
they
really matter.
Mike Force.
Mike, they come out and the one guy, they just like knock him out of the ring and he falls directly on his head
Yeah, oh,
on the
no.
apron as he falls out of the ring. And then it's like one shoulder tackle and then the Doomsday
The
device.
Doomsday device. That's what the move was called when he put the guy in his shoulder and then Hawk comes off with the clothesline.
And he flips completely over onto his face and that's just it. They're dead.
My biggest complaint is that on the WWE Network, and I understand why, there's this like generic guitar music that they come out to and plays their most of the match. They would actually come out to Iron Man by Black Sabbath.
Okay, yeah, way better.
And then way better. But the real value in the Road Warriors then would be these crazy promos afterwards with them screaming and their manager Paul Ellering. I loved Hawk critiquing Lex Luger's bodybuilding pose style. Oh, you're most muscular. You put your arms way in front of you so you can't see your muscles. This is how you do it.
I also loved how I wish that somebody would compliment me with the kind of energy that this guy compliments the other Road Warriors. It's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh, you look so good. Like,
Yeah, going back to the Iron Man thing for 1 second, given how short this freaking match is, I don't know if it would get past the bendy thing at the beginning
no,
of the song.
absolutely not.
no.
Like, maybe if they start with just the riff, it'll play like twice.
But that's fine, though. It's like you hear that noise a few times, and like that's the sound of your destruction.
So, by the way, Hawk is not complimenting the other Road Warrior. He's complimenting Tony Schiavone, the guy who's
The announcer.
interviewing them.
Oh.
And he
okay.
says something really gross, or like he implies something really gross. He's like, I bet there's a bunch of ladies out there who want to sit on your lap.
Sit on that dick.
That would be so much better if they just.
Bet
yeah.
you there's a bunch of ladies who want to jump on that boner.
And so Hawk is sort of...
Sorry, I'm at the end of this marathon and I'm losing my mind.
It's
Everybody.
fine
It's
that
all
you
good.
said it, Katie.
Boner, 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 boner. Peens.
I like Tony Schiavone has a podcast now, and like the host of it is always trying to get him to tell like lewd road stories. And like Tony was the kind of guy who didn't want to get into any trouble. He got married. He's like, oh yeah, Ric Flair invited me to his hotel room, and I'd go in, and there he'd be with whoever he was with that night, and they'd be naked. And it's like, you ever see Ric Flair's boner? It's like yes. And it's like, well, you want to come in, Tony? And it's like, no. And then I'd go back to my room.
Sausages.
Sausages.
So
Has anyone here seen Batista's dick?
You say that like you're kind of expecting a yes.
It's a total meme at this point, been going on for years. That it started with a company called Kayfabe Commentaries that started doing shows where people would send in questions. And now anytime there's anything in wrestling where people send in questions, somebody sends in, so how big is Batista's dick? And the world may never know.
Dana Brooke probably knows.
Dana Brooke may know by now after their Twitter exchange.
why
Melina
Batista-
apparently too.
Yeah.
Why Batista specifically? Any reasons?
I don't know.
Just meme reasons.
Big meaty guy, why not? How
Yeah.
big is Batista's dick? You were in a locker room? How big is Batista's dick, huh? Yeah.
Not as big as Two Cold Scorpios, apparently.
No, apparently
I was
not.
during the Andre match. I feel like you definitely got like an impression of how large Andre's dick is through like those tiny little
There
spandex.
you go.
Yeah.
They don't leave much to the imagination.
No,
Those
no.
spandex tights that
They
some
really
people
don't.
wear.
That's some people wear until we're like, we can't record another episode until you put pants on.
Yeah, I mean, apparently Two Cold Scorpio's dick is
Yeah.
frightening.
Yeah.
Mick Foley describes it in his book as a genitalactic freak of nature. He said that when he wrote that, the editors were like, he was surprised. He describes in his second book the process of getting a book published. And he's like, I had to sit down with a bunch of lawyers that had to like, anything I said about anyone else, they had to be like, well, we can't get sued by you say this. You can't say that about him. Would he be okay with it? And I said, if I know Scorpio, he has that page framed on his wall right now.
Okay.
Scorpio's cool. I met him incredibly briefly once in a handshake that he forgot as soon as it happened. I don't mind. That's fine.
So back to the Road Warriors.
Yeah.
Animal sounds like your normal aggressive musclehead.
Yeah.
Hawk has this incredible voice and is also kind of articulate, though not as articulate as their manager, Paul Ellering, who's a poet in his own way, I feel.
Oh, yeah. Ellering added a lot to the act.
But Hawk had some amazing lines. We don't get them so much in this one. What was the one that you were talking about before, Doc?
Which one?
One of Hawk's great
Hawk's
lines.
lines. Oh, yeah. Not in this match. Like, they're describing how badly they're going to hurt their opponents, and Hawk once goes, we're going to deviate their septums. I think that's perfect. That's the best thing to say.
Excuse me.
What a rush. Huh?
Ah, what a rush. Great. So
That
we
fart
got
was a rush.
So we have two more matches, I believe, here, and they're both.
I only have one.
No, we got two.
We got two more, and they're both pretty consequential. What should we get? What should we get
Well,
first?
so yeah, I guess they're both matches in which it was actually two superstars fighting
Right,
each
right.
other. The first one, let's go with this one. It's from WrestleMania 12 in 1996,
Yes.
and it's two of Evan's favorite wrestlers.
How happy were you to see these guys
Oh,
lock up, Evan?
I took exactly one note for this match, and it's fuck everyone. That's my
I mean,
note for this
at
match.
least it was short, right?
Yeah, sure.
So-
but then when it's short, the problem there is that I put myself in the position of somebody who was in the audience at the time, and I feel like I would have been upset. Like this thing, if I was somebody who liked these two wrestlers, I also would have been disappointed.
So
It's
here's
the Ultimate Warrior versus then just Hunter Hearst Helmsley.
Yeah.
With the debuting Sable.
The Connecticut Blue Blood. Right, the debuting Sable. And then after the match, they interview Mark Merrow, Sable's actual real-life husband at the time. And that leads to an altercation between Triple H and Merrow because Triple H was already very upset having lost to the Ultimate Warrior extremely quickly.
So the story behind this match is that Hunter Hearst Helmsley was the hottest new heel on the block. He was undefeated at this point. He had been going through opponents for months and months. This was going to be by far his biggest profile match so far, and he was a heel. People booed him. He was a proper heel. His whole gimmick was that he was, like I said, the Connecticut Blue Blood. He did like that, like American high-class British accent that you hear like villains in movies do.
Kind of like a fucking William F. Buckley sort of thing. Yeah.
And Vince was way behind the character, because here's the thing about Vince McMahon. He lives in Greenwich, Connecticut, but he grew up in a trailer park in North Carolina. He does not like his rich guy neighbors. He thinks that they're pretentious jerks. He doesn't, if he makes a fart joke to them, they don't like it. And he likes to fart loudly and then say, all I eat is protein, and they don't appreciate that. So he made a heel character based on those guys.
To be fair, if you're somebody who does that, nobody appreciates that.
Yeah,
Nobody wants to hang out with that.
But other wrestlers will be like, and then try and out-fart you. So Warrior had not been
Magic of the wrestling business.
I love it. So Warrior had not been seen for a few years at this point. He had been gone doing his thing. He hadn't been wrestling anywhere else.
He had been sodomizing Santa Claus.
Oh, right, in that comic book.
Yeah.
That came slightly later.
Oh.
Yes.
He had
Whoa. No, let's just
Yeah.
go back to that real quick.
So they put out one issue of Warrior Comics.
I have it.
You have it. We can show it to you at some point.
I have to dig it out.
Yeah,
but
not today. But yeah, so he finds Santa Claus
Are
and
the pages sticky?
I mean,
no.
that does sound hot.
And
Side note, I'm just going to say this is an observation I was going to say for an episode around Christmas, but we as a society have made entirely too much pornography that features Santa Claus.
Yes.
There's way too much. It all starts showing up on fucking Pornhub around Christmas, and it's not okay.
Oddly
It's
enough-
nothing anybody wants to see.
Oddly enough, not much Mrs. Claus.
And then,
the reindeer stuff.
well, yeah, I mean that's just scientifically hot. Like I can't, comment on that. Although I guess I did. Anyway,
so there was as Vince McMahon kind of points out and King points out on commentary, there are rumors. It's like, does Warrior look the same? Does he still have his physique? Can he still run to the ring? Can he still go? He couldn't in '98, but he still could here. And the fans were happy to see him come out. I don't think anybody was expecting like a long back and forth battle, but I don't think anybody was expecting what happened. And the fans were not disappointed because they didn't like Hunter Hearst Helmsley, who had been beating all the good guys. And then this ridiculous superhero comes out.
And they got to see all the Warrior stuff that you want to see.
Yeah.
He ran to the ring in his crazy long coat that he never took off.
Well, Hunter, he took it off after he got pedigreed.
He took it off after he got pedigreed.
So,
Okay, right.
Hunter jumps him at the bell, hits him a bunch of times, kicks him, knocks him down. And for a second, it seems like, maybe this guy can get the Warrior. He gives Warrior the pedigree, who had beaten everybody. To this day, it's beaten almost everybody he's done it to, and Warrior just stands up.
He completely no-sells it, goes into his warrioring up.
Yeah.
Oh my god, the
Immediately
level of
after
no
it.
selling is just hilarious. Like he's not even like, ouch. He's just like, nah, I didn't even feel that.
Yeah, and Katie, you started watching wrestling during like Triple H's reign of terror.
Yeah.
Wasn't it oddly satisfying to watch somebody just no-sell the pedigree?
Yes.
And then he just hits him with his thing, his clotheslines, his big shoulder tackle, gorilla press, splash. And then that's fucking it. And, I'll talk about this a little bit more also with the last match. And with this kind of squash, this like high-level squash, I mean, I think maybe this is more true for the last match we're going to talk about. But there's something to be said for a really quick squash actually protecting the guy who gets squashed to some degree. Well, let's talk about Diesel back, and I'll come
you mean
back
like
to that
literally protecting them, like they're not like
No,
like the way that the guy who Yokozuna murdered.
No, protecting their character, because if you get beaten by like a surprise attack, like the guy just hits their finisher out of nowhere,
Yeah.
well, you got surprised. You didn't
Okay,
really
yeah, I can
get
see that.
bested in a back and forth contest, So the last match we're talking about is Diesel versus Bob Backlund from.
One last thing about
Yeah.
Warrior Triple H.
I want to hear what Evan has to say
yeah,
more about
sure,
Warrior
yeah,
Triple H.
I mean, I don't really have much.
Yeah.
I fucking hate the Ultimate Warrior. I think it's a dumb bit. I guess if I had been a literal child and watching wrestling at the time, I would have enjoyed it because it
Yeah.
appeals to. This is like seeing a two eras come together in a way that does a massive disservice to both eras. I don't like Triple H. I find him to be vacuous and to be a void of anti-charisma. But this incarnation of Triple H makes the most sense to me
Yeah.
because here, like, you're supposed to fucking hate it. Like, you know, the whole thing of, like, she's the cerebral assassin is, like, the lead. I don't know. I just despise Triple H after this.
No, he actually had a character at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it was a coherent gimmick.
But honestly, the only real observation I have about the match is somebody at the end is holding up a sign that says "Warrior Rules." Hi, Vicky. And I thought that was
Excellent.
fun. And
Yeah.
that's as much as I have to say about this match.
So this match accomplished what it was supposed to do. It put Warrior right back into the upper echelon where he needed to be, and he was gone in another 6 months
Yeah.
because he completely self-destructed.
He was terrible to work with. He was notorious.
Yeah.
He wrestles
Crazy.
Goldust after this, and that's about it.
That's a very interesting match because Goldust had like a broken leg or something, and they decided to still go forward with the match, which is why they don't.
I knew that.
Yeah, that's why they don't do any moves. That's why they do the whole bullshit where Warrior steals Marlena's cigar and smokes it a bit, and they like banter. And it's a very interesting study case. That's a whole other. If we ever do an episode just with like weird oddity matches, that could go on there.
Okay, so
Also, the oddities.
Also the oddities, yes.
So at Survivor Series 1994. Oh wait, we need to go back a little farther to give the proper context.
Well,
for
this
match.
is the last match we have.
What
It'll
this
be
match needs context.
the
It
Diesel
needs
Backlund.
so much
Oh, yeah.
context.
No, I didn't need context. Honk, honk, ding, ding, kick, pin, honk, honk, fireworks.
I guess you'd say and then I'm gonna give my fucking feelings about
Okay,
this
okay.
match because
So Bob Backlund was the top WWF star just before Hogan. He had a 5-year-long world title reign in the early 80s.
Well, from 1978
To
until
83.
1983, he was the WWF champion.
Once Hogan came around and won the title, like he lost at the Iron Sheik and then Hogan beat the Iron Sheik, Backlund disappeared completely.
Word is McMahon wanted Backlund to turn heel, dye his hair black, and feud with Hogan and be like, your new style of wrestling isn't cool. I'm a serious amateur wrestler. But Backlund didn't want to turn heel.
In late 92, Backlund returns. Like, I'm the guy in my 40s who's going to try to wrestle again.
Backlund is like a serious, interesting study himself. Like the stories that go around him. Like apparently, back in the day, if you asked him, for an autograph, he would only give it to you if you could list the presidents in reverse order.
He still does that.
He's according to Doc, he still does that.
Yeah.
Backstage, you'll see him doing the Harvard step test.
Yeah, they had him do that on TNA once. They did a 3-hour pay-per-view, and he was just in the corner the whole time doing the Harvard step test, which is you put a step in front of you, and you step up, step down, step up, step, and you do that for hours.
And
He
could just do
does it.
He
for
can do it for
hours.
He could
hours
just do it
into
for
his
hours.
60s. He came to, I wasn't there that day, but one day he came to Johnny Rods' school. And there's like the 8 or 9 guys there training, like young guys, like all up on there in great shape. And he got into the ring, wrestled with one of them until they were out of breath, threw him out of the ring, did that with everybody there. He's in his mid-60s at this point, and then took pictures with everybody.
So he comes back in late 92 as a babyface, just, friendly old guy Bob Backlund. I saw him wrestle Bret Hart at a house show in 93 where they wrestled for 20 minutes just trading holds without a single strike, and Bret won the match. And that's how he was for a while until shortly before Survivor Series, Bret Hart defends the WWF title against him in a match on Superstars, and Bret beats Backlund, and Backlund snaps. He becomes completely unhinged, loses his mind, attacks Bret Hart, puts him in this amazing submission hold, the crossface chicken wing, won't let it go.
I remember you trying to put me in that in high school.
Yeah. Or like the other day.
And then I acquiesced to it that time. In high school, you just fucking surprised me with it.
And he's staring at his hands like, I'm crazy. I'm looking at my hands.
Finally, he turns heel.
He completely turned heel. He has this match with Bret Hart at Survivor Series 94 where he puts him in the crossface chicken wing. Bret does not submit, but Owen Hart convinces Bret's mom, Helen, to throw in the towel, causing Bret to lose the title. Bob Backlund is the WWF champion once again, more than 10 years after his first reign. On that same pay-per-view, Diesel, who had been Shawn Michaels' bodyguard and tag team partner, gets sick of Shawn Michaels' bullshit and turns against him after Shawn like super kicks Diesel accidentally. So Diesel's suddenly a babyface. And I remember watching Superstars the night before this match. So this match was the match between Backlund and Diesel is November 26, 1994, 3 days after the Survivor Series. It's a house show match, untelevised.
At Madison Square Garden.
At Madison Square Garden. So the day before, I see his promo on Superstars, and Diesel's talking about wrestling Backlund, and for some reason, I knew he was going to win the damn title. And sure enough, and this never happened on house shows, or very rarely, they have this match, and it turns out Diesel beat Backlund. Then they show the match on Superstars, and it's 8 fucking seconds long. Kick, jackknife, Diesel is the champion.
I reiterate, I didn't need context. Honk, honk, ding, ding. Kick, kick, jackknife, 1, 2, 3. Ding, ding, honk, honk, fireworks.
I'm amazed that there was a story, because my impression of this was it starts, there's way too much of an intro.
Yeah.
Because it's a world title match. It's the main event of the show.
Okay, that explains it, because it's like it goes dark. The fucking like Diesel's weird like klaxon alarm theme starts.
Yeah, this is before they add the guitar riff to it.
Long fucking like procession to the ring, like, you know, all this, and then I didn't even notice the kick at the beginning. I just saw him throw him to the ground. It's over, and then as much time as there was at the beginning, then there is that much time at the end of the fucking theme starts up again, and he goes, and I like, to me this was the not an ideal version of a squash.
Yeah.
Like I would say of everything that we've watched today, probably Yokozuna to me was like the platonic ideal of a squash. But I guess this was maybe the most literal form of a squash, where it's just like I'm going to pick him up and throw him to the ground, and we're done. And I cannot believe that it was a guy who was a fucking actual guy.
So-
Did you even notice that it was like a world title match? Like Diesel celebrates with the belt because he just won, and they announce him as the new champion.
I guess I just thought that he was very happy with himself. That's all.
And then at the end, Diesel breaks the spaghetti squash over Backlund's head.
It is. And you know what? There's no fucking seasoning in it. There's no flavor. Diesel does not know. He's no heart. I'll tell you that.
No, definitely not. But 2 points about your observation there. First of all, professional wrestling, this is a great way to show how professional wrestling is way more than what happens from bell to bell. All of that extra stuff was the main event, including the tiny match in the middle. The second thing is I've seen fan cam footage of this that's longer, because we don't see Backlund's introduction. Backlund comes out with no music because his gimmick is that he's from 1977 with the belt, and the crowd wants him dead. Because he just won from Bret Hart, and he's been the hottest heel in the company, and he's Bob Backlund, the champion from 20 years ago. Why is he? And he comes out, and he climbs the turnbuckle on all 4 corners slowly and celebrates with the belt. And he goes into the middle of the ring, and he has the belt. And then he hits all 4 corners again with the belt. And then when Diesel comes out and just sticks him and pins him, the crowd is so happy that Diesel just murdered this guy that they hate. That's how you be a heel. That's how you get a crowd to hate you. Not, oh, I like this villain character. Isn't it cool? No, the crowd hated him.
While I feel like if they had shown that,
Yeah.
I would have actually been more upset about having to watch this.
I don't think you would have liked
But
that.
there would have also been part of me that appreciated the ridiculousness a lot, because they was thinking if they had Diesel's whole crazy long intro and then Backlund's whole crazy even longer intro and then an 8-second match, I would have been like, all right, this is now in the realm of this is now like a fucking Tim and Eric sketch or something.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know where. I couldn't find that video. This was the longest one that I could find. And I looked for the longest one. Because the official one WWE has is like 45 seconds.
Right, it's just mostly the match.
This one was like 4 minutes long.
Right.
But
this is maybe the most consequential squash match of all time, because it is a world title change, and Diesel would be champion for most of the next year, where, they took everything cool about the character and stripped it away so he could be the smiling babyface.
And I think there's several reasons why they did it this way. One is because Diesel was fairly limited in the ring. He wouldn't have really looked very good doing a long match.
Yeah. Nash was once quoted as saying, like, how come you only have 5 moves? Someone's like, how come you only have 5 moves? And he's like, when did I get a 5th?
He's also said that, like, after this match, they did the whole house show loop with rematches because now people want to see Diesel versus Bob Backlund. And he said those matches were all terrible. He said, like, Backlund was calling, like, sunset flips and moves to him. And he said The Undertaker pulled him aside and is like, if I see you do a sunset flip again, you're going to see me again in the back, and you don't want to see me again in the back. It's like, all right, because they were doing, like, technical wrestling moves. So the match was...
didn't get it.
Backlund didn't get it. You can't do that match with that guy. Backlund was a great wrestler in his day, but he was not very versatile.
And I think another reason why they did the squash the way they did was what I was suggesting before, which is that it protected Backlund. You know, if Diesel had beaten Backlund in a 20-minute wrestling match,
right,
it would have killed Backlund's character as the technical wrestling master, which they actually did earlier than that at WrestleMania 9 with the Razor Ramon match, where he beat the wrestler with wrestling.
Right, he caught him with a small package, but that's...
But in this case, he kicked him in the gut, knocked the wind out of him, and then gave him his finish. And so, Diesel looks like a destroyer, but Backlund also, lost by surprise, not by being bested at wrestling.
They asked Diesel, did Backlund have a problem, like, losing the belt to you like that? And he said Backlund took the next 2 minutes to crawl on his hands and knees slowly to the back. No, he didn't have a problem with it. He's a professional. He's like, oh, we're putting the big guy over as the champion? Okay, I'm going to make him look like he killed me as much as possible, while not eating up the scenery and staying in the ring.
So while I would not say that these matches made me any more of a wrestling fan than I was previously, I feel like I understand this dimension a little bit more. I get the idea. I understand why they have fallen out of favor. I also understand why they were popular at the time in the context of what wrestling was at the time. But yeah, I feel like this could not fly in modern wrestling.
The chase
for
for television ratings does not lend itself to squash matches, but the chase for selling tickets to see something better that you have to pay for does.
I mean, this kind of squash match, this last match, we've had a couple of actually world title squashes. Sheamus beat Daniel Bryan in 18 seconds.
Which, as much as people hated that match, it really launched Bryan's career.
Absolutely. And more recently and more infamously, Brock Lesnar defeated Kofi Kingston for the WWE title in like 5 seconds.
And like that match has had a lot of debate, but that's the epitome of what you were talking about a surprise. The bell rings, Kofi leaps at Brock Lesnar, snatches him out of the air, and gives him the F5. And that's the whole match.
But yeah, that was very upsetting to a lot of fans.
Oh, for sure.
Alrighty, this has been Contesting Wrestling. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoy it. If you really enjoyed it, you should go to our Patreon, patreon.com/contestingwrestling, and sign up for either the $5 tier, where you get an entire extra episode every week, or just the $1 tier, where you don't get the premium episode, but you do get access to the main feed episodes in advance. Basically, I post them up whenever I finish editing them. And, you should follow us on Twitter @ContestingW. Let us know what you think. If there's anything that you want to see us cover, if there's anything that you think the guys should show me so as to increase my possible enjoyment of wrestling.
Oh, yeah,
recommend Goldberg matches. He loves it.
Don't do that.
The premium complement to this episode will feature some instances where squash matches didn't quite go as you would expect.
Yeah, we have a couple of treats in mind for that. We want to do the entire Razor Ramon 1, 2, 3 Kid saga, and you'll see. Hey,
and some Goldberg,
and some Goldberg, yes.
And guys, always disinfect your poop bucket.
Yeah, very important.
And as Evan has been saying, if you are listening to us on a platform that has any kind of review process on it, please drop us a review. It helps algorithms point us to people. And like and share and subscribe. Enjoy, everybody.
Banzai.
Hello.
This has been Contesting Wrestling. We love you.
Get out.